YouTube family. Okay, so over the next couple of weeks, you're going to see, in addition to our inside renovation, that we are doing so many outside projects. And I'm going to explain why we're doing so many things and what our obstacles have been on doing some of the outdoor projects. But today, Philip and I are outside. You can see the sun is shining. Oh, I just need this on my face today. It's one of those days where you just need to be outside and not think about the things you have inside going on and just spend the day outside doing absolutely anything. Today, as you saw in the previous storm that we just recently had, a lot of our trees are completely arched over. And we do want to make use of the wood from those trees, or from many of those trees, because we are going to do our own firewood this year, which will be a huge milestone because we have previously, the last couple of winters here, been heating our house completely only with wood. We don't have any heating system, and we've been purchasing our wood, which is a yearly expense of around $2,500 to $3,000 that we don't want to pay out for wood that we burn for heat in our house. So we are going to challenge ourselves this year and use a lot of the trees that have fallen and a lot of trees that we are going to fall that we want to make bigger horse pastures with and have our own wood. We have a wood chipper coming later this week, which will help us with all the limbs and give us also some, chip to put in different areas like the horse round pen or like pathways for the garden or whatever we want to use the chips for, which will help us with some of the mess from the fallen trees. But today we want to do a little bit of a burn, and a couple of the trees are leaning over, literally over where we usually do a little bit of a burn. So Philip's going to tackle those today. I'm just collecting junk from the woods. There's still so much to clean up here because there was an abandoned property, and there's just never a good day to do it. So today we're going to tackle as much as we can, because within the next 3 weeks, we basically need to have absolutely everything outside. Fencing for the horses done, fencing for the pigs done, property immaculate, greenhouse shelving in, things started in the greenhouse, because we have the biggest project we have ever done yet on this property coming up as soon as we're allowed. I had to explain a couple things today while we're outside working, because we had a bunch of questions, and also because we wanted to kind of keep you in the loop as to what is going on with a project that we've been trying to work on that you see that we clearly haven't started yet. One of the reasons is obviously it's winter right now, but we've had some major delays and setbacks with the barn build. So as you know, when we got Hudson and Lennon, they came a couple months earlier than we had expected them to come, and which is fine. They were babies and they've been in the round pen, and we kind of put that together quickly for them. They were so small, and that worked out fine. And that they've been in the mini barn. They've always been in the same barn even prior to coming to us, and so they're comfortable that way. But now that they're getting so big, it's upsetting, because we last year in the spring, only 4 months after we got Hudson and Lennon, should have been able to break ground on a stable barn build, which I'll show you what we're building, what it's going to look like, give you details about the barn. But what's happened is that in the spring, April of 2023, I think, boy, time flies, we were trying to break ground and do the posts and the concrete and start erecting the barn. Problem is, tell them, Hudsy. Problem is, when we submitted to be able to get our permit for the barn, they said, oh no, you can't build a barn, and gave us some reasons why we couldn't build the barn. They also delayed us in replying to any of our phone calls or emails or anything, and kind of beat around the bush in giving us the information as to what we actually needed to be able to make the permit actually happen. So if they were saying, no, you can't have the permit for it, they weren't really telling us what we needed in the process. So a couple of more months went by, I think about 6 more months went by before we even slightly got an answer as to what we needed for the property and why we couldn't build the barn where we wanted to build the barn, or really anywhere on the property that we've owned. By the way, cash paid for outright. We have no mortgage. Everything that's here on our property is paid for. We don't have any property debt whatsoever. So we applied to be able to do this barn. It is a 24 by 42. It's a nice large stable barn. It has 2 stalls, a tack room, and an outside grooming area. Perfect for our Hudson and London, who are enjoying the mud today, by the way. And one of the problems is that our property is actually 2 properties. So we own 2 properties at this spot here, and then we also own the property at our cottage, which has nothing to do with this property. So we own a property where our house is and a little bit of land around the house. That is PID, or PID number 1. The second PID that we own is all of the property from basically the driveway over the garage, back behind, sort of in our marshy area, our woods, all the way up to the water's edge of the brook. So that's the 2 properties that we own. And so we want to put the barn where the wood shelter was, which is technically property number 2, PID number 2. There is no spot on PID number 1 that we could put the barn, because we have the orchard on that side and it's a hill, and that would take a lot of leveling out and, you know, sacrificing that hill to be able to put the barn over there, and way too close to the house. And we're not obviously going to put it like on the front porch. So the only option for the stable barn is to put it on PID number 2. So we're going to put the barn right there where you see the wood shelter was. It's going to go lengthwise from basically starting over here all the way along the fence line over here, and it's going to come out here. Okay. So we decided that's where we were going to put the barn, and then they said that because there's not a well or a septic approval on this PID number 2, we can't build the barn there. So even though we're not going to do any plumbing or electrical in the barn, they have told us that without a well or septic approval, which is very costly, we cannot build the barn there. Next problem was that we had bought engineered plans online to be able to build the barn, and they said no, those engineered plans are not okay to use. You need to have a Nova Scotia engineer draw up the plans, or you need to have a Nova Scotia engineer sign the plans that you purchase online, make any adjustments that they want to make to it, and then submit it back into us. And so we actually, well, we were trying to do the one step that they wanted, where they had an engineer from Nova Scotia look over the plans and sign the plans. We could not, literally in any budget, convince any engineers around to actually look over plans that someone else had already done, and or someone that wouldn't have an 18-month or more wait to actually draw us up new plans for a stable barn, whether it be under like their own design or something similar to what we wanted. We didn't even care at that point. We were just trying to find someone who was willing to either look over the plans or someone who could draw us up new plans, and we couldn't. And it took us, I think, 6 or 7 months of calling every single network or resource that we could find from anyone to convince someone to actually sign those plans. And luckily, we found a really nice gentleman who was able to do it, and he did it within like a week's time, and he was amazing to deal with. And we're so thankful that we were able to check off one of those things off of our list of things we needed to do to be able to make the barn happen. We're at the point right now where basically 75% of the barn budget that we had saved up to build the barn has gone completely to paperwork. So we had to have a land surveyor obviously do a survey of both of the PIDs that we have, and that was like almost $4,000, $3,800. And then we had to have an engineer sign those plans that we already purchased. So we purchased the plans for a price, and then we had to have a Nova Scotia engineer sign those plans and make any adjustments. So that was an expensive fee. And then we had to go back to the surveyor and say, okay, now that you have the properties all surveyed, I need you to consolidate them together. Because the only way they're going to allow us to build the barn is if we either have a well and a septic approval done, or also a legal easement saying that if we ever sold one or the other of the properties, that somebody could legally cross the one property and come into the other property to get to the barn. Or, have that septic or well approval done, or consolidate the properties together. So believe it or not, the cheaper option, very expensive option, but cheaper option was to have the land surveyor conduct a new survey, do what they call basically remap out and consolidate the two together. So the surveyor does that, and then it goes to 2 other companies to be able to approve the work that surveyor did. And then we're going to get that paperwork back, and it's going to say, yes, we're going to allow you to turn this into 1 PID instead of 2, or no, you cannot. So that is what we need to do. We had the engineer sign it. He made a couple small, literally 2 little 2-inch tiny adjustments to 2 little extra beams on the barn. That was it. We paid to have that done, had all that done, paid the surveyor to do his work, paid the surveyor to consolidate the properties together, and then paid the 2 companies that survey that's now been remade has gone out to. We've paid those 2 as well. So we're at the point where we're waiting to hear back from those paperworks. It's been about a month since they were submitted. And once we get those back, fingers crossed they say yes, and then we pay a lousy $25 and about, I think, 4 cents per square foot for the permit for the barn. So that has been the holdup for the barn. In addition to the fact that all of the paperwork for the barn ate up 75% of the actual budget that we had for the barn, we've now also, in the process of paying for all of those things, been resaving for the actual build of the barn. So in the process of behind the scenes, we have had a local gentleman, you're gonna see in the next like week or so, a local gentleman milled all of the wood for us that we need for the barn, for the structure of the barn, the main posts of the barn, and all of the framework for the barn. And then we'll have to go purchase the concrete that we need to put in those posts. And then our next step will be to go and get all of the wall surfaces, all of the exterior wall wood surfaces, and the wood that we need for the roof and our shingles. So we've been doing this kind of in sections right now because we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, just in case the two agencies that take the paperwork of the consolidated property, in case they say no. So that's kind of where we're at with the barn. But Hudson and Lennon really need their stable barn, and we're hoping that we get the green light in just a couple weeks here. It should maybe be another week or two before we hear back. And we're going to hopefully get the yes, you can go ahead, the yes, you can go ahead and go get your permit. And we can get the permit the same day we get that approval back. And so we're waiting for the weather to change, and we're waiting for this final paperwork to come back from these two agencies to be able to give us that approval so that we can actually start the barn. So we need all of your good vibes and good thoughts and prayers on us getting this back with a green light that we can go ahead and that the property has been agreed upon to be consolidated together, because this has been approximately, I would say, close to $8,300 for us to be able to do this section of the paperwork for us to be able to build the barn. So it's been crazy for us budget-wise, of a family who obviously works on a budget just like every other family, and doing our YouTube renovations and content budgets and things that we need to do. It's been insane trying to get this going, but this is going to be the biggest project that we've been able to work on here on the homestead. We are so excited about this project, and we'll be so proud that we're going to build it ourselves. And we've, put together all the plans, and Philip and I are so excited that this is something that we can do together for our horses and for our homestead, and make this next level of our dream on this property here come true. So I hope that explains a little bit as to what the delay is with the barn and what we have coming up. And we are so excited that this barn build is going to happen. We're going to go through any of the obstacles that we have to be able to get to the point where we're actually building our dream barn for Hudson and London. And they are going to get a barn. If we have to make adjustments to the plan along the way, then of course we're going to, but we hope that we don't have to. And we hope that everything that we've been trying and paying out for and working so hard towards is going to come into fruition. And right now, I just keep looking out the kitchen window over at that space where the barn is going to go, thinking how amazing will it be to just look outside and see Hudson and Lennon enjoying their new barn, and the Dutch doors for them to have their heads peeking out of. And oh, it's just going to be so dreamy when it's all done. So I just wanted to keep you up to date with what was going on. I love you. I will see you on tomorrow's episode. We'll be back in the bathroom space.